You're listening to WSTU Stewart.
This is WPSL Fort Saint Lucie.
The opinions on this program are those of the program host and guest and not necessarily those of WPSL. WPSL does not endorse products that may be mentioned. Any reproduction or retransmission of this broadcast is strictly prohibited without written consent of WPSL. Legal questions? Ask a lawyer. Give us a call at 340-1590, 340-1590 here at the studios of WPSL. And Ask a Lawyer with your host, Attorney Stuart M. Address.
Good morning. This is Stuart Address for Ask a Lawyer, and it's December 31st.
We have to change the name of the show, Stuart.
Ask a Married Lawyer?
Ask a Married Lawyer. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. We accomplished it finally on Monday. Today is day 5 of marriage. I haven't lost it yet.
Hey, there you go. I'm not going to say anything.
I'd like to know, why didn't WPSL broadcast my wedding? How many people on WPSL get married?
Good question. It's probably been, you're our first marriage in a long time.
So why weren't you there broadcasting?
Interesting. I never thought of it. Well, it's an invasion of privacy for one.
Not if I waive it. That's a legal term. Waiver.
A waiver. Yeah, you sign away. Do you know any lawyers that could draw one of those up? Oh.
Yeah, I have one that can draw one up. I just got a bill from him for my new estate planning documents. And I don't want to pay it because it's so high. I mean, my God, how could lawyers get away with charging these rates?
Well, hey, you is one.
When I'm the recipient, I don't like it either. I can understand my client's pain. All right, well, folks, this is the first show of year 5 of Ask a Lawyer, and I'm sure Greg has nothing special planned for me.
I've already done that. You got it at your wedding.
Giving me chocolate that says WPSL?
Yeah.
Well, thank you for the chocolate. I have so much chocolate that I have a dietitian and a therapist that are going to be very angry with me. We had a candy table at the wedding that had a variety of chocolates from Canada.
Ooh.
Sort of a nod that my then fiance, now wife, wanted to do for me. So we had what are called Aero bars, and we had coffee crisps, and we had Smarties, which are their version of M&Ms, and we had their version of Kit Kat bars. We had a few other things. So there is so much leftover chocolate in this house that your WPSL bar may survive until next WPSL time.
There you go.
My goodness.
Well, I've got one in the office that I just unearthed that might be 15 years old if you want.
Is it white?
It's only about 15 years old.
May have turned white by now.
Actually,
call it white chocolate.
It hasn't.
You need to give a warning on it.
I know. Yeah.
Otherwise, it's failure to warn.
Or we could start selling it at Aldi or something.
All right. Well, I had 2 topics today for the last show of the year. I have a feeling we might not get to the second one. The second one was about New Year's resolutions, and are some of them actually enforceable? Be careful what you resolve. But we may end up having to talk about that next week. And we can then talk about how many of you have already breached your resolutions and what, if any, are the consequences. But today, somebody I know who should be listening intrigued me enough to do a little research and talk about online dating and fake and misleading profiles And can you do anything about it? You know, you correspond with this person, you get a photo, and you go meet them maybe for these new things called coffee dates. And they're 30 years older than their photo and 40 pounds heavier. You know, can you do anything about that?
So,
Well, maybe, but is there a cause of action? So we're going to talk a little bit about online dating. I know there are two people right now within my realm of sphere of influence who are just embarking on online dating on two different sites. And they have some concerns, and most of what I say today is not going to make them any happier, but there is some good news that will be coming, so listen carefully. A 2018 Psychology Today survey found that 19% of people online were giving dating sites a try at that moment, and that includes dating apps. And most of those folks, 84%, were using them to find a romantic partner. Now, fair disclosure, I found wife number 4 and number 3 online, and I found a number of girlfriends online before this was fashionable, when I was in chat groups on AOL. Long time ago, when you put in floppy disks.
AOL.
AOL.
Oh, brother.
So I'm fairly experienced with this online dating thing before there was ever a real online dating site. I must admit, we can talk about my faux pas as we go through these items. So what's more, not only were 84% using them to try to find a romantic partner, 31% of the individuals polled said they'd actually gone on a real world date with someone they had met through a dating site. So that's about 1/3, not a shy amount. And roughly 1 in 4 people in that survey said that a dating website had led them to a more serious romantic relationship. That's a quarter of the people who are trying it are actually getting into a relationship, not just dates. Matter of fact, online dating has become so extensive, it has so permeated our culture, that it is starting to take the place of a host of offline ways people used to meet, such as college campuses, working world, one social circle. To go to a bar now is passé. That's not where you go to meet somebody. Where you go if you want to, pardon my French, get laid. So you got tons and tons and tons of dating sites. A lot more than one can manage. So what is happening that a lot of people I know are concerned about is lying and deception in the profiles, whether you're male or female. You know, I once had this absolutely incredibly gorgeous, buxom, blonde proclaim interest in me. Supposedly lived in Fort Pierce. Father supposedly had oil fields in Texas. I didn't take that further than her email inquiry to me, because I simply knew that if this woman was real, she was too good for me. I had no chance. So I knew for a fact she was not real. Now, over a few years' time, I would get these I guess like notices or match notices from the same profile, always with a different gorgeous woman's face on the profile. So I guess they rotated. You know, those are obviously fake sites. It's called catfishing, and it is very prevalent. admittedly, on all of these sites, you do have to be careful of who you give information to, who you choose to go meet, whether you do a little bit of a background investigation on these folks before you go meet them. You know, I once had a date agree to let me pick her up at her home, but later on, when things were going well on the date and we were laughing, tell me that she was a little concerned that I might put her in the trunk and dispose of her. I mean, it sounds ridiculous, right? But these are concerns that women particularly have. You're going to go meet a strange guy. What might happen to you? And it's not an insignificant concern. That's why, you know, all these people get together very often in public. The guy doesn't generally pick up the girl anymore in the beginning because these women want to be safe. They want to have their exit strategy planned.
That's why she was carrying an AR-15 with her.
Right. Now, I have to tell you, back in the days when I was finding some dates on AOL in the late 80s and very, very early 90s, you know, everybody has a bad story to tell. I was living in South Jersey, and I once drove up to North Jersey for a date. This woman was not at all what I thought. Looked a lot different than she had portrayed. But, you know, I had to be a gentleman, so I took her out to a restaurant anyway. But this was so bad, and the date was going so poorly, that I excused myself to go to the men's room, and I looked to see if there was a window I could escape. This is the date I refer to as Chewbacca. It was that bad. So, you know, we all have stories. Well, but then again, you know, I've had successes.
Hey, you could just tip a cab driver and say, take her home.
Yeah, but then I have to acknowledge, you know, I have to be strong and brave and tell her I'm not interested. Whereas if I could find a good window, I could just slink away. You know, what are people lying about? And there is a study from 2007 at Cornell and Michigan State that looked into this. They found that a higher percentage of people lie about their weight than either their height or age. Guilty. In fact, this study found that almost 2/3 of the participants' weight was inaccurate by 5 pounds or more. Guilty. They found that age was the least lied about characteristic. I've encountered that. You know, I had a date with somebody, a lunch date at 2J's once, where, again, the picture was not the person I was viewing. And this person looked to be my mother's age. And, you know, we had lunch and we went our separate ways, never to meet again. But I was so amazed at what this woman actually looked like that I found a picture of her through Google. And I showed it to people, including my mother. I think back then also my father was still alive. And said, how old, you know, I didn't tell them that this was somebody I went out with. I said, how old do you think this person is? I don't know, 70, 80. My goodness. At that point, I was like 50. Huh. The moral, before I go into the rest of the moral of the story, I want to keep very clear is there are a lot of manure that you have to claw through if you're going to find that diamond that got pooped out by the dog.
Hey, I want to find out who bought lunch at 2J's.
I'm a gentleman. I buy the lunch. But truthfully, I really do believe, I've always been surprised to people out there, very shy and introverted, except in the legal world. That's where I perform. And, put me in a party and I'll stay in one corner until somebody comes over. And that changed this last round that led up to me meeting my wife. It changed, I was, I guess, 57, maybe 58. And I had a different attitude. And my attitude was, I don't care if I'm rejected anymore. It used to be my biggest fear. Now, you don't want me? You don't want me. Who the heck gives a darn? I'll just move on to the next one. Why was I so willing to accept all this rejection you've got to go through? Because if it achieved my goal of finding somebody I fell in love with, it was worth it. And, it did. And I am. So, my message is, don't let all the disasters and the horror stories deter you from the effort if you really are looking to find somebody.
Maybe we should hear from your wife for equal time.
Lisa, they say they'd like to hear from my wife for equal time. You want to come say a word? Right now, Greg just said he'd like to hear from my wife for equal time as to the worthiness of online dating and going through the dregs of humanity to try to find something good. Got to come close to the microphone.
Well, I don't want to be on video.
You want? That's just Facebook. Nobody watches that.
Yeah, right.
My mother in Atlanta will see you.
I'm over here.
All right. Tell everybody what your experience was with online dating.
You need to, hi Greg, how are you? Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to
You
you.
need to have patience,
Congratulations.
that's for sure. And if you don't succeed, keep trying, even if it's 4 or 5 dates a week. For us ladies, they come quick. And if,
No,
no, the dating.
you don't mean it the way it sounds.
Dating options come quick. The texting,
She didn't mean
chatting.
they. Okay, I won't say it. Go on.
Please, Stuart. The chatting, the texting, it all happens very quickly. I would just say go out on every date, unless once you speak with somebody, you really can't stand them, then check them off the list and move on to the next one.
Do you do any checking before you go out with somebody?
I did. I did put people's names in. Although you don't have last names, you could figure out.
Well, if you were speaking on phone or through email, you probably could get last names at that point.
Well, the email is usually through the dating app, so it's kind of kept confidential.
Well, until you go off site.
Well, when you go off site, you can run their phone number.
Right.
Some of them don't want to give you their phone number. Some of them just want to do all texting, and I think that's rude.
And isn't it a danger flag?
Absolutely. Especially when they're from another state on the other side of the country and they think you're going to meet them tomorrow.
Did anyone ever ask you to loan them money?
No, I would not have fallen for that one.
All right. So how did your online dating experience end up?
Well, my online dating experience ended up with me getting a wedding ring on my finger this Monday. And I happened to have found the love of my life, which at times people give up and you don't think they're out there, but my advice is hang in, and if one isn't good, move on to the next one. If that one's no good, move on to the next one.
Did you ever have an experience where the face didn't match it, and, when you met them in person, or there was some other big lie that you had found?
No,
No, you
the
didn't.
face didn't match the description, and it was a catfishing sort of thing right in the beginning. But hey, Stu, I was only on this for 2 months before I met you.
You're a lucky one, aren't you?
Yeah. So here's what I say to Stuart, and I say to everybody else in this dating pool of heavens knows what's out there nowadays for 2023. Just don't give up till the miracle happens. Just keep moving forward.
All right, and that's the story from the other side.
And
Oh my, okay.
Signing off.
Signing
Yeah.
off.
Happy and healthy New Year to everybody.
All right, go back to cooking now for New Year's Eve.
I am.
Shoot, cook.
Oh, you are terrible. Oh, mazel tov.
Thank you very much. All right, so, half of the participants did lie about their height. Men probably made themselves taller, and women may have made themselves a couple inches shorter. There were no gender effects observed in the study. In other words, it wasn't more men lying or being a little deceptive than women. It was roughly equal. There were an equal amount of, exaggerations, and we're talking here about the people who were serious about trying to find a romantic partner, because I have another study on that. There, the quote unquote lies were a little bit exaggerations to make you appear better in the profile. They weren't so significant that when you would meet the person, that you would feel that you were deceived and not want to have anything to do with them. That is a very different situation from those that end up going on dates and either find the person is just really not at all what they pretended to be, or they go up and meet the person and have a very bad experience, assault, rape, etc., which is why you need to protect yourself. The study that we're talking about here, the Cornell and Michigan State study, found that to some extent, minor or major, 81% of the participants lied about something in their profile. 81%. So we're talking lie now. The word is, a harsh word. They're saying if you exaggerated your height by an inch, they classifying that a lie for the purposes of the study. So I would say 81% of the people were not 100% straightforward with who they said they were. And you do want to put your best foot forward, even when you meet in the real world. Let's say if you did meet at a bar, you're going to put your best foot forward. You're not going to talk about all your flaws right away. So to some extent, that's understandable.
Yeah, but at least you're face to face with somebody, rather
Precisely.
than just somewhere in a computer.
Well, I heard the other day a suggestion, maybe not a bad one. Have them send you a photo of themselves holding up today's newspaper.
Oh, that's a great line.
Then that's really who they are. I can see both women and men being interested in such a tactic. There was another study in 2005 by Pew Internet and American Life Project. It found that 54% of online daters believed that someone else had presented false information in their profile, and 28% felt that they had been contacted in a way that left them feeling harassed or uncomfortable. Now, I would suspect this is more the women than the men, and unfortunately, it's the reality of the online dating world, and I think it's a reality of life. It's a reality of the workplace. Doesn't make it right. Indeed, it's one of the areas of law I practice. Employment discrimination, sexual harassment. So no, it's definitely not right, and it's a shame that the price of trying to find somebody to spend your life with, particularly for women, has to be one in four having an experience that leaves them feeling very uncomfortable and vulnerable, and hopefully nothing else.
Can you sue an online dating site if you have a horrible experience? And I'm talking
Communications Decency Act gives them immunity.
Really?
The Federal Communications Decency Act has given immunity to online publishers, and sort of dating services fall into the definition. that are not presenting their own information. In other words, you get somebody else's profile, the site doesn't do anything. You choose whether to like it or send in a message or something, they have immunity. Doesn't necessarily mean in all situations that the person has immunity and that you can't sue them. Now, to be fair, the study also reflected disincentives for users to lie. There are lots of reasons to lie, and there are reasons not to lie. For example, if you truly anticipate a future interaction and you are going a little bit too far, it's going to be uncovered the second you meet the person. And if the person feels that you had really deceived them, too much of an exaggeration on weight, height, body type, you're not getting a second date. So that is a disincentive to lie. Now, I'll be honest about my own profile. My profile, had like, I don't know, 10 to 15 pictures. And a number of them were full body pictures. My attitude was, let them see what I look like. If they're not happy with it, they won't contact me. I didn't want to get emotionally involved with somebody texting and then talking, and then have them see me and see, okay, I'm substantially overweight. If that was a deal breaker, my attitude was, let them see it now. But not everybody does that. And so, it happens, but there is this disincentive. If you're really serious about finding somebody, it's just not a good idea. According to the results of the Pew Internet and American Life Project study, if people became suspicious that their date had been dishonest in their emails, it was correlating with a dwindling attraction and less interest in going out on another date. And the study found that it didn't take a lot of deception for this to occur, just a limited amount. Why should such a backlash happen? Well, people may anticipate that there is a little bit of deception going on in somebody else's profile, perhaps because your own profile is a little bit deceptive. When they actually met the person, they expected sincerity, and they were less forgiving about any deception in the profile. So, just a little warning. Now, it's not all bad news, really not. This, everything I've said so far would make one think, perhaps this really isn't worth it. I know a couple people who are listening and maybe embarking on this, maybe thinking right now, forget it. Why have they been trying to get me on this dating site for so long? Well, it's not all bad news. In 2008, an estimated 16 million Americans reported using online dating services. Of these 16 million users, 3 million reported entering long-term relationships, including marriage, with their partners who they had met online. That's about 20%. 20% is not a bad number. A 1 in 5 chance of meeting the love of your life or the love of your next 10 years. Do you hate them? I don't know. So, it's not all bad news. And again, I will tell you from personal experience, before I met my wife, I went on a number of dates with other women. I'm actually still friends with 2 of them. And these are 2 women who ultimately told me they couldn't see continuing dating. They couldn't see a serious relationship. One because of my weight, and another because of my eating disorder. And they just found it would be too complicated. Now, that's very disheartening. But I'll tell you something, I haven't lost a lot of weight. it did lead me to do a little bit more research about, my eating disorder, which had never had a name, and found it had a name now. And I knew it had a name. I knew it had a name about 10 years ago. But now they were treating adults. When I first discovered that they had given a name to my situation, I called, I think it was Duke, who was beginning to treat. And I said, well, I'm interested. And they said, how old are you? And I told them. And they said, well, we can't help you. We're only just beginning to learn how to treat children. You've had this thing for 50 years. We have no idea how to treat you. But later, after these two women were honest with me, didn't just blow me off with some stupid reason, but were honest with me and forced me really to start looking into this again. And I discovered that there was adult treatment. I spent over a year, traveling back and forth to West Palm for eating disorder center, 3 times a week. I wouldn't have done that if these women hadn't been honest. And, we still friends. What do I define as friends right now? We still comment and like each other's posts on Facebook. We don't talk on the phone. We don't get together. But, they're not completely out of my life. And to me, even having that left over is a good benefit of the online dating experience. All right, so a little bit more negative news. In 2019, the Federal Trade Commission started investigating Match.com. Well, actually, they started investigating Match.com in 2017. They filed a lawsuit against Match.com in 2019. They tried to get Match to settle for $60 million fine. Ultimately, the negotiations broke down and that led to the lawsuit. Now, the FTC alleged, among other things, that this is something to watch for, not just with Match, that Match.com let people create profiles for free, but required a subscription to respond to messages. I know that's true. But the FTC also alleged that Match sent emails to non-subscribers telling them they had received a response on the site, but millions of those emails referred to notices that came from accounts that they had already flagged as likely fake. So this encourages people to subscribe. And the FTC alleged that even though Match had blocked some of the suspicious accounts from sending messages to its paying subscribers, it didn't block it to their free subscribers, for free users. Now that's a little naughty. And that's something that's not protected by the Communications Decency Act. That's called fraud. So the FTC said that the people who then subscribed in response to the messages were potentially exposed to scammers. And the FTC indicated that that practice was unfair and deceptive. It placed people at risk of romance scams so that Match could make more money, a business incentive. Now, Andrew Smith, who's the director of the FTC's Bureau of Consumer Protection, said, quote, online dating services obviously shouldn't be using romance scammers as a way to fatten their bottom line, end quote. And I think we'd all agree. He also said that we believe that Match.com conned people into paying for subscriptions via messages the company knew were from scammers. And they allege that millions of contacts generated Match's you caught his eye notices from accounts that were already known to be fraudulent. Now, does this happen still? You better believe it. You sign up for any dating site and you are immediately going to get messages and it's going to show likes. There's no way that's true. There's no way it happens that quickly. So, I've always been suspicious of that. And therefore, you have to look at profiles very carefully for indicators either of truth, or of falsity. And be careful, especially women. Now, consumers who considered purchasing a Match.com subscription generally were unaware that as many as 25 to 30% of Match.com members who register each day are using Match.com to attempt to perpetrate scams, including romance scams, phishing schemes, fraudulent advertising, and extortion. Now, that sounds horrible, and it truly is horrible, which means you just have to be very careful.
So is it true love when they're about 40 or 50 years younger than you?
No, I think money may be involved there.
Cha-ching.
If some 80-year-old guy is getting some 30-year-old woman, there's got to be something in there. That's just my suspicious attitude. Anyway, what happened to this lawsuit? In March of 2021, it was dismissed with leave to amend, which is a very common practice in cases. It means the judge thinks that certain things are deficient and you have to replead to hopefully satisfy the court and state a claim. It doesn't mean that Match didn't do anything wrong. It means be careful, whether male or female. Realize that deception and fraud is out there, and even casual users often fib about something in their profile. Know who you're truly speaking to, and if it's important, what they really look like now, not possibly 20 years ago. All right, so all that leads us to the really big question. Can you sue the lawyers? Lies in these online profiles range from the simple to the possibly tortious to the potentially criminal. Now, in June of 2021, in Flagler County, Florida, up in good old Daytona Beach, a lawsuit was filed against a doctor arising from his online profile and his actions upon meeting at least one woman. Dr. Gerard Abate is alleged to have drugged and sexually assaulted a woman who he lured into his home after meeting her in an online dating website. Abate is accused of rape and sexual assault by deception and fraud by lying about his marital status, thereby tricking his victim into thinking that he was committed to a long-term serious relationship. And allegedly, Dr. Abate drugged the plaintiff in the suit so that she would be unable to protect herself. The plaintiff's profile, the victim, was explicit that she was seeking a serious, long-term relationship and one in which she would move slowly. Shortly after meeting on the website, the two began messaging. Dr. Abate represented that he was single, when in fact he was actually married and had been for many years. They engaged in ongoing communications, allegedly to perpetrate the false impression that he was similarly interested in a committed relationship as the plaintiff desired. It was these deceptions and fraudulent misrepresentations that created a potential legal claim. You have here assault, battery, fraudulent misrepresentation, fraud, deception, and the lawsuit is now pending and it's in its discovery phase. Now, that is probably an extreme. It really is an extreme, but it is a danger. And I've known a lot of women that are afraid of that danger. and rightfully so. And they take various steps to protect themselves. As you heard, my wife would try to check out people online. And I must admit that I did it as well.
Okay, I've got a question.
Yeah,
How
sure.
does a private citizen, this sounds terribly unromantic, get a background check on someone?
Well, there are a lot of sites online that will give you a background check, criminal history, all the sites that things that are legal, but that you may find difficult to put all together yourself. They'll do it for a fee. But this information is available. Let's say this guy says he lives in Port St. Lucie. You could check St. Lucie County to see if his name has ever come up in a criminal case. You could check St. Lucie County online. You don't have to go anywhere. Free to see if his name has ever come up in a domestic relations case. You could see if it's ever come up in a circuit civil case. Has anybody ever sued him? Has it come up in a bankruptcy case? You can check the federal court online. I mean, and that does take time and effort, which is why, if you want, you can pay a site, for, one dossier, they say. But it's a reasonable thing to do if you're uncertain. Now, if you've been speaking on the phone, I spoke with Lisa, my goodness, probably for a week, 3 or 4 hours a day. I mean, that's why we met. I mean, we were talking hours at a time.
So you didn't text her at all. You were actually physically talking.
Right. I think we texted a very little bit, but then she wanted a phone call, which is fine with me. And at least then you get voice. Now, you could do a so-called, now it's Zoom or, FaceTime or whatever. You could do that and you could see the person you're talking to. Now, is that the person that's going to show up? Maybe not. Maybe that's the person that's just really good talking. So you have to worry a little bit about that. And that's why, again, these days, most women want to meet in a public place, which is safe and logical. It's also why Lisa didn't do this, probably because we had spoken for so many hours. But it's why a lot of women don't want the men to pick them up the first time at their home. Not only don't they want to get in his car, but they don't want the men to actually know where they live. And not necessarily an unwise precaution.
Yeah, I mean, you think of a potential stalker or something.
Now, is catfishing illegal? One illustration is of someone who is in an internet-only romantic relationship with someone for an extended period of time. He says he loved her and wants to marry her. Turns out the woman never existed. The person he was talking to all those years was lying to him. The photos weren't of her. She was not single and in love. Rather, she was married with 2 kids. Didn't look anything like the woman in the photos. I'm taking this from an actual example. The term catfishing has been applied to such scenarios. The Urban Dictionary defines catfishing as the phenomenon of internet predators that fabricate online identities and entire social circles to trick people into emotional romantic relationships over a long period of time. So now, can you be sued if you're a catfisher? Is it illegal to lie? That's essentially what catfishing is. Simply put, catfishing is willful deception amplified by the internet. Now,
don't morals come into play here?
Not in the law. Morals certainly come into play if you're going to meet somebody and you're interested in a relationship, but not in terms of whether you can sue them. So the answer to the question of whether it's illegal to lie, like most legal questions, is it depends. That's why you ask a lawyer. In most cases, being lied to is not actionable. In other words, you cannot sue for being a victim of a lie. I have brown eyes. 6'4" when I'm really 5'6". No, can't sue. However, when the lie is made to try to get you to part with your money, that's called fraud. And it's illegal, both civilly and criminally. I know somebody, I won't say who I thought was very, very, very intelligent, who ended up getting catfished and gave somebody $10,000 and then never heard from them again. Except 6 months later, when he came up with some excuse and tried to get another $2,500. The woman was too smart by that point, having parted with $10,000. So don't give the money. What about lies that don't involve a monetary component? What about lies where the intention and the result is simply to mess with somebody's mind or for some thrill? What if the harm is emotional, stressful? Well, as it turns out, the law may give certain victims of catfishing a civil remedy. The cases that provide this remedy are generally intentional infliction of emotional distress, something lawyers learn in first year, first semester torts class. It's one of the basic torts. What is intentional infliction of emotional distress? First, it is mental suffering that is flagrant or outrageous and intolerable in a civilized society. That is the first element of the tort. It is also intended to produce harm, and harm is actually caused. Now, you'd be surprised at what is not viewed as reckless and intolerable in a civilized society. I have used those phrases several times and have courts dismiss actions. And I tell you, I have used those phrases in every instance where I believed it to be true. And I have been astonished at situations that courts have said didn't meet that standard. Now, that was in New Jersey, where I practiced until 1993. In Florida, I don't use that. Why not? The Florida Supreme Court has essentially done away with the entire tort. Okay? Unless you are a parent of a child and are visible in person, see that child harmed in some way, you cannot allege intentional infliction of emotional distress or negligent infliction of emotional distress. The Florida Supreme Court essentially said that there were too many lawsuits alleging infliction of emotional distress, and they were clogging the court system. And so therefore, we are going to determine as a Supreme Court that the tort no longer exists in Florida, except in this very narrow situation. And it is very narrow. And it's very clear when you don't fall into it. So in Florida, no, you can't even sue for that. I don't know what I could tell you other than to go back to the positives. And since there's only a few minutes left, I won't even go into the New Year's resolutions. The positives are, at least 20% find a long-term relationship. I will be honest, I have found 3 wives now. I hate to say that. Obviously, the first 2 didn't work out. This one's going to work till death do we part, or I'm taking her with me.
No, that's good, because I was worried you were going to become Mickey Rooney or something here.
I know it's embarrassing, honestly, but they didn't work, and I am now making the effort again, older and wiser, and hopefully I understand the phrase that, yes, dear, you are right.
Yeah.
Many have told me it's a secret. Unfortunately, I am not that type, and I cannot always defer. I must assert myself, and maybe that's where I get myself into trouble. Oh, gosh.
Maybe
So
that's why we've lasted 48 years.
Maybe, but I will tell you, on Monday, I had a day to beat all days. It was a day different than any other wedding reception I've had. It was not bigger necessarily, but there was a lot more love in that room. It was definitely different. And after making me swear on the Holy Torah that I would not put cake on her face, I then gave her the first bite into her mouth, and she then proceeded to put it on my nose. I therefore quickly did to her too. She planned that attack. Anyway, folks, this is Stuart Address for Ask a Lawyer. I hope you have a happy New Year, a happy New Year's Eve. Stay safe, even in online dating. Don't be deterred. And I'll be back next Friday with our New Year's resolutions really enforceable? So long.
You've been listening to Ask a Married Lawyer right here on WPSL, Fort St. Lucie, and WSTU Stewart. The talk of the Treasure Coast, and in STU's case, Martin County's Heritage Station. Happy New Year, everyone.